the poor in heart, for all you are, I will worship you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's Jason, the Pasta Doctor, and I am back with another episode of Shower Thoughts. And, what we do here is, it started with a thought I actually had in the shower. That's how it got its name. But I got a viewer. Thanks for being here. So excited to see you. What we are talking about depression and anxiety today. So I'm going to begin this episode with a couple caveats and warnings. Hey, there's my dog, and my cat's back there giving herself a bath. Oh, my animals, how I love them. But as we dive in today, we are going to caveats and warnings. I even have notes so I don't forget. So we're going to be talking about anxiety and depression today, particularly the difference between a specific emotional experience and the disorders. So here are the caveats and warnings. This is not medical advice. I am not that kind of doctor. I am not here to diagnose anything or anyone. I leave that to mental health professionals. While the information I'm going to share with you is accurate to the best of my knowledge, don't just take my word for it. Do the research yourself. And most importantly, if you are struggling with either anxiety or depression, it is up to you to seek out the help that you need. And I encourage you to do so. So with all that out of the way, we can dive in. As always, if you are not following me, I would love for you to follow me here on Twitch, or I do accept, subs. And if you are watching this later on YouTube, the like and subscribe is always a wonderful gift. But we're on Twitch for now, and so we're going to dive into, it's a topic that's close to my own heart, anxiety and depression. For anybody who doesn't know, if you've been following me along as I've read my book, Living Intentionally, I have talked about this before, but I will talk about it again. I have several diagnoses. Among them are generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, and major depressive disorder. Thankfully, by the grace of God, the help of some really good therapists, and at one time, the help of a really good antidepressant, I'm doing pretty well, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But it's part of my story. It's part of my lived experience. And because of that, I come on here and talk about mental health stuff. And you're going to notice, if you've ever watched me before, you'll know this. I fidget a lot because I have a really bad back. And I'm waiting for insurance approval to get my next round of steroid injections. Yay me. But it's been bugging me a lot lately. So I tend to squirm in my chair. All right. So first part, we're going to talk about anxiety specifically and the anxiety spectrum. So anxiety is a built-in survival mechanism. It is designed to keep us safe and alert us to potential threats. However, when this system misfires or remains stuck in the on position, it transitions from a helpful emotion to a debilitating condition. So we're going to talk about the difference between daily anxiety or situational anxiety and disorders. All right, so let's talk about everyday anxiety. It is a healthy, natural response to stressors. It serves a protective purpose and has some pretty easily identifiable characteristics. So one, it'll have an identifiable cause. It's going to be tied to a specific, understandable trigger, maybe a job interview, a financial setback, a first date. Maybe you got into a car accident. Maybe you got fired. Maybe you're starting a new job. Maybe it's the first day or at a new school. Maybe it's a fight that you had with your significant other or a loved one. The point is you can go, okay, I'm feeling this way, but I know exactly why. I got into a car accident this morning, and all day I have just been on edge. Right? That would make sense. The specific situation that has caused you to feel that way all day long. It is proportionate, right? The intensity of the worry matches the actual risk or importance of the situation. So maybe it's the car accident again. You know how much money it's going to cost you. Maybe you know it was your fault, or maybe it wasn't your fault, and that just makes it worse. But whatever the case, it's proportionate. It's not, the world is over, or I'm never going to drive again, or I'm never going to get out of this situation. That's when it goes beyond proportionate. But you're going in for an interview for a job you really want. Maybe you're unemployed, and so you're nervous about it. That's normal. That happens to everybody, and wouldn't necessarily, or maybe it's part of a disorder, but in that instance, it's not the disorder. It is proportionate. It is natural to feel that way, to feel nervous or to feel anxious about a job interview or the car accident or all the other examples I've thrown out there. It is time limited. The feelings of anxiety will subside once the stressful event has passed or the problem is resolved. So you go to the interview, you nail it, you come out, you feel better, right? The anxiety level decreases. You had the car accident, you talk to your insurance agent, your deductible is not as high as you remember, they're going to get your car fixed, you got yourself a rental car. I'm using that as an example because that happened to my wife actually, but super high anxiety until we started to get all the pieces dealt with. But once we had the car into the repair shop and we had the rental car and all of that, her anxiety lowered immensely. And so it's time limited. Once the event, once the situation has passed, once the problem is resolved, you come back down to a baseline. And it's functional. Everyday anxiety is functional. It can be uncomfortable, but this kind of anxiety does not prevent you from carrying out your daily activities or responsibilities. You had the interview, but you still went back to your other job, or you still went home and took care of your dog, or whatever it might be. The car accident, you were still able to go to work or something like that, and I know I'm throwing out generic examples all over the place, and sometimes it's not exactly how it works. The car accident's bad. You're hurt, or somebody else is hurt, or you end up in the hospital, or you end up filing police reports and all kinds of stuff. I understand the situations I'm using are very simplistic. They're basic. But even in that situation, the anxiety would be normal and proportionate. And as you resolved the issues, it would start to get better. Anxiety disorders are different. An anxiety disorder, such as generalized anxiety disorder, is a persistent psychiatric condition where the fear response is exaggerated and chronic, right? It doesn't go away. It doesn't allow you to function normally. So let's look at the characteristics of anxiety disorders. Vague triggers. So the worry is often not tied to a specific event, and it can attach itself to everyday mundane occurrences. When my anxiety was out of control, it could be something as simple as like my wife not texting me back. I text her while she was work. I didn't hear back from her immediately. My anxiety would shoot through the roof. Give me a second. I had a tickle in my throat, and I remembered to mute my microphone. I'm so proud of me. But there were vague triggers, right? It wasn't the car accident, the job interview, the first date, whatever. It is a mundane occurrence. You're just going about your day. Something happens that shouldn't be all that big of a deal, and you just have a really big difficulty with it. You struggle to get yourself back on track. You struggle to regulate your emotions. It's disproportionate, which is the second identifier. The anxiety is excessive. It far outweighs the actual likelihood or impact of the feared event. Something that I am very good at, which was part of my anxiety problems, and I dealt with it on several occasions in therapy, was the act of catastrophizing. I am an expert catastrophizer. And what does that mean? Well, I saw every situation as catastrophic, as world ending, as life ending, relationship ending, job ending. I thought everything meant that things were just going to crumble in on me, and there was no way out of it. There was no way to make it better. There was no way to fix it. And my fear far outweighed what was actually going on. It made my anxiety disproportionate. It wasn't a normal level of worry or nervousness given the specific situation. It was way off the scale. And then these symptoms become persistent, or they are chronic. For generalized anxiety disorder, excessive worry occurs more days than not for at least 6 months. For me, it was pretty easy. It occurred more days than not for years before I finally went to a therapist and started getting the help that I needed. And I can tell you, honestly, even though, and again, I'm not that kind of doctor, so please keep that in mind. And the medical field is struggling to recognize something known as adrenal fatigue. In other words, when you live in a state of constant anxiety, your adrenal gland is constantly pumping adrenaline into your system. Over time, your adrenal gland gets tired. You have adrenal fatigue, which I suffered with and struggled with until, like I said, through therapy and some good medication, prescribed medication that I got from a psychiatrist, just to be, uber clear about that, started to calm my anxiety and allow my adrenal gland to rest. But it still took me a while to get back to a regulated state, a couple of years actually. But an anxiety disorder is going to be persistent, and finally, it's going to be disruptive. It significantly impairs a person's ability to function at work, in school, or in relationships. It can cause physical symptoms like insomnia, muscle tension, or chronic fatigue. Now, I was a fairly high-functioning person with anxiety and fairly high-functioning with depression as well. I would still tend to get my work done even though I didn't enjoy it. I would still typically talk to people even though it was a struggle for me. What would happen that it's a dead giveaway, and if you ever notice it, it's actually, my face is tingling a little bit because I'm thinking about it, and I try not to think about it all that often. I would get a facial twitch. And all right, I'm going to give you an example, but hopefully it doesn't trigger me to keep doing it throughout the video. That could happen. But I would do something like this. And I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But I would get that to the point that the muscles in my face would start to hurt. My neck would get so tense that the muscles in my neck and then my shoulders would hurt. It would have cause me to have a headache. It would cause my eyes to twitch. Not the kind of twitch we're on right now, but you know what I mean. And the result of it was these physical symptoms would become overwhelming. They would keep me from sleeping. They would keep me from relaxing in any way. And then I would really struggle to either work or to be around other people. It just was very, very difficult for me. Now, I'm telling you all of this, right? This is, again, not diagnostic, but maybe you're like, wow, some of that stuff sounds like me. Okay, then get help. It's okay to get help. You can find a therapist. You can talk to a pastor. You can even talk to a friend or a family member that you trust and let them know what's going on with you. But the fact of the matter is, I needed professional help. I needed professional help. I went to therapy. I learned things. And some of these things we've talked about in previous Shower Thoughts. And so if you've missed any of those, highly recommend go hit up my YouTube channel, Past a Doctor. I'm on YouTube. All of my past videos and live streams from Twitch are up on there. I would just highly encourage you to go check some of those out because I have some videos specifically about coping mechanisms. But what I would do is I learned boxed breathing. I learned the importance of exercise. I learned the importance of mindfulness and grounding. And you can, take all of those and have some fun on the internet and look up all of those things. But I had to learn tools to deal with it. And in order to get those tools to work, I had a therapist who I could talk to. And for several years. I'm not on them anymore. And again, I praise God, and it's by His grace. But I started off on one anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication. After a couple of years, it was actually causing me some issues. I was having some weird reactions to it. So I switched to a new one, which then I took for another year and a half or so before weaning off of it. And I even weaned off the first one. The transition from the first one that was causing me problems to the new one took about 4 months, where I would slowly lower the dose. And eventually I got to every other day as I introduced the new one on the off days, until I was on the new one, like I said, for about a year and a half. But as a result of those things, sorry, I'm getting a text and I forgot to turn my computer speakers down. But as a result of the therapy and that, I was able then to focus enough to start using the tools and then eventually wean off the medication altogether. And now I'm not going to tell you I'm anxiety free. That would be a lie. But I am better able to cope with it using the tools that I have been given. And I really should turn my laptop speakers down. I'm going to do that real quick. It should not affect anything else. I don't even know if the microphone picked up the ding, but man, it's distracting. And so as a result of all of that, I'm doing pretty good with my anxiety disorder. It still exists. It's still there. I still deal with it from time to time, but it is not something I deal with all the time, every day, like I used to. So if any of that sounds familiar to you, I encourage you, reach out to someone that you know and trust, or find yourself a therapist and work through that. So I love this quote from Dr. Michelle Krask. It says, "The key distinction is not the presence of worry, but whether that worry is proportionate, controllable, and time limited. If it's not proportionate, controllable, and time limited, you might be dealing with a disorder." Roughly 19.1% of U.S. adults have experienced an anxiety disorder in the past year. Generalized anxiety disorder alone affects 6.8 million adults, about 3.1% of the U.S. population. And despite the availability of effective care, only about 43.2% of people with an anxiety disorder are currently receiving treatment. That makes me sick. There are options, and it just hurts so bad knowing that there are so many people who are struggling with these things and are not getting the help they need. So if you're one of them, get the help you need. Please get the help that you need. So let's move on to part 2, the depression spectrum. So sadness is a universal human experience. Every one of us experiences that. And we use terms like feeling depressed or feeling blue casually, but they can obscure the reality of clinical depression, a severe or pervasive medical illness. I break it down into 2 categories, right? You have the situational depression, right? The loss of a loved one. You're going to feel depressed for a while as you grieve the loss of a job. Any kind of loss can cause that. You're going to feel that. If you have a breakup, if you lose your job, if you have a fight with somebody you care about, that can lead to situational depression. That situation is causing depression. And so we'll talk about that. That's different than a disorder, which is a psychological and physiological illness. We'll talk about that too. So first, sadness is an emotional reaction to loss, disappointment, or difficult life circumstances. Feeling sad, feeling depressed is not the same as having a disorder, right? It is reactionary. It's usually linked to a specific life event, like a breakup, losing a job, or receiving bad news. And so the situation happens, your immediate reaction is, that really bums me out, that really sucks. It is fluctuating, right? The sadness can come in waves. And even while grieving or feeling down, a person can still experience moments of joy or laugh at a joke. I'll tell you, if I'm not having a depressive episode as a result of my disorder, but I'm just having a bad day, and it's not a cure-all, And I'm not saying this will work for everybody, but if I'm just having a bad day, I will hit YouTube and find stand up comedians, or I watch a show that I know I love, that I know is funny, specifically episodes that I find funny, and I'll get myself laughing. Dead serious. It's a distracting technique, but if it's not a depressive episode, I will do that. A depressive episode, I will watch something that normally I would find funny and I won't laugh. And that's when I know I'm in trouble. But it's fluctuating, right? So it's reactionary, fluctuating, it's self-limiting. Over time, the feelings naturally fade and the person can adapt and move forward. Think of the loss of the loved one, the way you feel about it the moment it happened compared to the way you feel about it a week later, a month later, a year later, 5 years later. It doesn't mean that 5 years later that thinking about that loved one won't still make you sad. When my grandfather passed away, which at this point was about 25 years ago, it was very difficult for me at the time. And over time, right, 25 years is a long time. Over that period of time, it doesn't make me feel the way it did 25 years ago. However, there will still be times where I'll think about my grandpa and I'll just miss him. And I'll get a little sad in the moment. And so what I do is I reframe that to a happy memory that I have about my grandfather, which there are many. My grandfather was just an incredible man, loved him dearly, and I know he loved me. But even though years later I can still have some emotions of sadness, it's still self-limiting. I don't feel the way now that I felt 25 years ago when it happened. Right. And with a depressive episode, or not an episode, with feeling depressed or feeling sad, right, the acute kind of situational depression we're talking about, self-esteem remains intact. And so while someone may feel unhappy about a situation, they do not generally experience pervasive feelings of worthlessness or self-loathing. And that's huge. It's another way I can tell the difference between maybe I'm having a bad day or maybe I'm spiraling into a depressive episode. If I'm having a bad day, I might feel sad, but I'm not blaming myself. I'm not feeling worthless as a result. Major depressive disorder is different. It is a complex psychological and physiological illness that alters how you think, how you feel, and how you function. It is pervasive and lasting. The quote-unquote low mood is constant, lasting for a minimum of 2 weeks and often occurs without a clear external reason, right? There's not a situation. It's not the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, or a breakup, or receiving bad news. It's just there. Now, for me, the first time I can remember feeling depressed and beyond sadness in the moment, but that kept with it the worthlessness, the feelings of worthlessness and self-hatred and so on and so forth. I was 12 years old. That's how far back it is for me, right? I'm pushing 50. I'm just a couple months away from my 50th birthday. And so to feel that way, I didn't start getting help with it till I was in my early 30s. So imagine feeling that way more often than not for 20 years. Maybe you don't have to imagine it. Maybe you have been through something similar or you're going through something like that now. Just let me remind you, there is help available, and I highly encourage you to seek it out. Dial 988 if it's really bad, right? That's the suicide prevention hotline. I encourage you, do it. Don't wait. Don't think about it. Don't think I'll do it tomorrow. Do it right now. Pick up your phone and dial it right now. If that's you and you need help, please. But it lasts for a long period of time. You will have a loss of pleasure. It's got a fun clinical word for it called anhedonia, right? Hedonism is the constant seeking out of pleasure. The opposite of that, a loss of pleasure. It's a total loss of interest or pleasure in hobbies, relationships, and activities that once brought you joy. And I can give you many examples from my own life, but things like sex had I wasn't interested at all. And my wife thought it was her fault, and it wasn't her fault. I was depressed. I'm a musician. I love to play and write songs. I wouldn't play. Weeks and months at a time would go by. I wouldn't pick up a guitar or a bass. I just wouldn't. I talked about watching TV and shows and things that made me laugh and the things that I thought funny. I wouldn't. I would sit there, it would be on, and I wouldn't laugh. I wouldn't enjoy it. It was horrible. And then I would have physical symptoms. Clinical depression physically alters the body, causing severe changes in appetite, major sleep disturbances, either sleeping too much or not at all, and profound unexplainable exhaustion. The symptoms for me were crazy. And it's actually, I can typically now, if it starts, which gratefully I haven't had a really bad depressive episode in quite a while, but if it starts, I feel it physically before my mind registers what's happening, which is kind of crazy to me. But I've talked to therapists and doctors about that, and it is just the way I'm made, I guess. And I feel it right here. It feels like a fog and a pressure settling on the front of my head, and it just drives me insane. I hate it. I hate the way it feels. I hate the way I act. I tend to become, I get insomnia. I can't sleep when I'm depressed. Changes in appetite. Some people just stop eating when they're depressed. I eat everything. And I eat everything because I'm chasing dopamine. I know, I have the burden of knowledge sometimes. I know that dopamine is what my brain is lacking when I'm struggling with a depressed episode. And so I seek out dopamine. And you get a good dopamine hit from eating a cupcake. You do. I'm not saying that's why you should eat a cupcake. You should eat a cupcake because it's good. But I would start to overeat like excessively because I was chasing a dopamine hit. And then it brings about, finally, cognitive distortion. It brings about overwhelming, irrational feelings of guilt, hopelessness, and worthlessness. And it can include recurring thoughts of death or suicide. And so I really just want you, if you are struggling with this in any way, get the help you need. Recognize what's going on and reach out for help. Dial that 988, talk to a trusted friend, talk to a pastor, talk to a therapist, talk to your doctor. There are a lot of people. And if you're in a place where you're really feeling like you're not sure it's worth going forward, dial 988, or if you can, just go to the emergency room and tell them what's going on. I promise you, there are people there who want to help you. And if you need that help, it is okay to ask for it. It is 100% okay to ask for it. Dr. Alex Korb, who is a neuroscientist, said depression is not just sadness, it's a complex set of emotions and physical changes. Major depressive disorder affects more than 21 million American adults, about 8.4% of the population 18 and older. It is the leading cause of disability worldwide. In the U.S., it is the leading cause of disability for people ages 15 to 44. Roughly 39% of adults who experience a major depressive episode do not receive treatment. And depression frequently co-occurs with anxiety. Nearly 1/2 of those diagnosed with depression are also diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. This guy right here. And I just want to talk about this for a second before we close up shop for the afternoon. And I've talked about it before. A couple things. One, there's a stigma around getting help. There's a stigma around mental health disorders, which is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. There should not be a stigma around any of it. It is part of life for some people. Not everybody. And I'm grateful that not everybody experiences it as a disorder, whether it's depression or anxiety. But it is a disorder for some people. And so we need to get rid of the stigma. And we get rid of the stigma by recognizing it for what it is as an illness. And I often compare it to cancer. I had people and have had people and probably still have people, even though they're not as vocal about it anymore, who have judged me harshly for going to a therapist and for taking an antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication. I had people treat me differently. I had people tell me that if I was really a Christian, I wouldn't need those things. Well, guess what? Christians struggle too. Now, I love Jesus, and I know he loves me, and I know I am saved by his death and resurrection, and you can be too. And if you'd like to talk about that, I would love to talk to you about it. But the reality is, even for Christians, they struggle with these things. You can get into the Bible and read the Psalms. David struggled with it. You can read some of Paul's letters in the New Testament. Paul struggled with it. We all, not all, but people struggle with it. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. And either way, you still need help. And it's okay to get that help. Forget the stigmas, forget what other people are going to think or what other people might say. It is okay to get help. Just like it's okay to get help if you have cancer. And I use this all the time. If a person, no one's going to judge a person who has cancer for getting chemotherapy or radiation treatment or having surgery, right? Nobody's going to judge that person. And for me, especially with my depression, the only way it got better was with medication, which means that for me, and it's not necessarily the case for everybody, remember, I'm not that kind of doctor, but for me, it meant it was a chemical imbalance in my brain. And that chemical imbalance needed to be fixed in order for my brain to start functioning normally. Once it was fixed with a medication and my brain was able to function normally, I was on medication for close to 4 years. While my brain started functioning normally under the medication, then I could wean off the medication and my brain learned how to do it on its own. Praise God, the mind is an incredible thing. It is an incredible thing. We talked about neuroplasticity on Tuesday when we talked about living intentionally, and the brain is an incredible thing. And so now my brain is capable of functioning without the medication. It doesn't change the fact that the medication gave me the ability to get there. And I will say it over and over again, the grace of God. And to him be the glory that I am doing well. But I'm saying all of this because it is not just something you make up. It's not always going to be temporary. Sometimes it is. We talked about that. Some anxiety and sadness and depression are temporary, they are situational, and they go away. If you think you might be struggling with a disorder, though, you need help. And it's okay to get that help. Just like it would be okay to get help if you had cancer or whatever it might be, right? It's okay with a doctor's prescription to take medication. Please do not self-medicate. Please, please, please. I know many people who have told me that they smoke weed to deal with their anxiety or they drink to cope with their depression. And both weed and alcohol are depressants. They actually make depression worse. And because they're a depressant, when the effects of that substance wear off, then the anxiety or depression comes back with a vengeance. It is so much worse. So much worse. So don't self-medicate. Go to a doctor, go to a psychiatrist, go to a therapist, and get the help you actually need. Please. Please, please. If you're in a place where maybe you live in a small town and there's no availability, well, you're on Twitch or you're on YouTube, and so you know that you have internet access. There are a lot of online places where you can get connected with a good therapist and do have therapy sessions over the internet. I have done that. And so, okay, I've been on that for a while. So I'm going to move forward. I'm going to throw out the conclusion to my little presentation this afternoon. The defining line between everyday emotions and clinical disorders comes down to intensity, duration, and impairment. Normal anxiety and sadness are temporary responses to life's ups and downs that eventually pass. Anxiety disorders and depressive disorders are persistent psychological conditions that hijack a person's life and require professional intervention. Recognizing the difference is the first step towards reducing stigma and ensuring those who are struggling get the targeted treatment they need. So with all of that, that's kind of my episode for the day. I have a couple viewers. Thanks to the person who just popped in, but I hate to say it, we're kind of on the tail end of the stream today, but I'm still glad that you're here and that you popped in, and I would highly encourage you to watch the whole thing. But if anybody has a question, I will ramble on for a moment or two and give you an opportunity to throw something in the chat. If nobody has a question, that's okay. You can move on with your day and I can move on with mine. But if you didn't get to watch the whole thing, I highly encourage you to go back and watch the whole thing. And it would be hopefully beneficial for you. And if it's maybe not just for you, maybe it's for somebody else. Maybe there's somebody in your life that you recognize this is going on, and then you can be an encouragement to them and a help to them. And I would really hope that you would do so, that you would be an encouragement and help to somebody around you. Because I truly believe that we can get rid of the stigma around mental health. We can get rid of the stigma around people getting help for mental health issues. And we can only do that if we talk about it and we normalize it. I mean, you heard those statistics. Millions of people struggle with this. It is not isolated. It's not only certain people or certain populations that struggle with it. It has nothing to do with how much money you have. It has nothing to do with your job. It has nothing to do with your family of origin. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin. Mental health disorders exist. Now, some of those things can contribute. I know that that's true. I had a very difficult family of origin, not as bad as some other people. So I'm not comparing myself to anyone else, but I had a difficult family origin. My dad was depressed. I know it. After I got my master's degree in counseling, I was able to look back and go, wow, my dad was clinically depressed. Never got help for it, constantly tried to self-medicate with it, with alcohol and seeking pleasure, and it never worked. As a result, it's spilled into the family, and I had a rough childhood. Again, I'm not comparing myself to anybody else. There are other people who had it much worse than I did. I know that. And so I'm going to take a drink instead of holding this. So it's not that those things can't contribute. Family of origin, finances, jobs, relationships, right? They can all contribute. But mental health disorders are disorders. And for a person who's got a good job and good relationships in their lives and is generally doing okay, that's still struggling with depression and anxiety, that's going to let you know it's much more than a situation, right? It's not necessarily a situation that caused it, but it might be something more. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're the person I'm talking to because you're struggling with it, please get the help you need. And if I'm talking to you and you're like, yeah, this really doesn't apply to me, I don't struggle with depression or anxiety, maybe you know someone who does. And if that's the case, then be an encouragement to that person. You can't force someone to get help. I know that. Nobody could force me to get help, but you could be an encouragement to them. And I strongly encourage you to be an encouragement to them. It's extremely important and very helpful to have people in your life who love and support you when you're struggling with these things. And finally, maybe it's not you, right? You're not feeling depressed or anxious. And maybe you don't know anybody who is. But as we talked about, there are millions of people who struggle with it. So maybe just normalizing it. Maybe just talking about it. Maybe not being a person who adds stigma to it, but who takes it away. And that is still helpful to the wide community of people who struggle with mental health issues. And so with all that being said, I'm grateful you're here. Thank you for watching. Nobody threw a question in the chat, so we're going to move on with our lives. If you're watching this later, whether it's on Twitch, it'll be up for the week or so, or you're watching it on YouTube, and you have a specific question or you want to talk about something specific, let me know. You can shoot me a message and maybe we'll throw it out on another episode sometime. All right. Well, with all that being said, have an amazing rest of your day and rest of your week, and we will see you again next time.